All right, we are live now with the Health, Love, and Life show, and this is Coach Harney, and we are on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast, the number one internet singles talk network. And tonight I have a special guest, Annette Wittenberger, and she's a former military, I want to say major. Is that right?
Yes,
Wow.
That's correct.
Impressive. I was reading about a great story this week. I've read it more than once about a gentleman, Joshua Chamberlain. You ever heard of him? Joshua
I have not. I haven't.
Because of him, he may have saved the United States.
Wow.
Think about that. Yeah, he was in Gettysburg, the Battle of Round Top, July 2nd, 1863. He's a former Maine school teacher, and he was part of the 20th Maine Volunteer Force, a bunch of guys from Maine, and they were at Gettysburg, and he was down to a couple hundred men. They've been getting beat up by the Confederates for quite a while, and there was really nothing left. And if they would have been beaten there, the Union Army's left flank was completely exposed.
Wow.
And they were literally down to their last bullets. They had no more bullets. And so he had to make a decision at the last second. And it's really a historical story. It's amazing. And so they finally said, "Colonel, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?" He goes, "Fix bayonets." And then he called it a full wheel, or some kind of a wheel, which means a charge.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Charge." And they just ran down the hill like crazy people. And the was called, I think, First Alabama or something like that. They thought, who are these guys? They're out of control. And they literally overwhelmed them, just a couple hundred guys. And there was well over probably 1,000, 1,500 Confederate troops coming up the hill. And they were completely, and within minutes, overwhelmed. They captured their officers, and that was it.
Incredible.
All because he made a decision to charge. One guy hit, a former school teacher the year before. And, but that's just the power of one decision can change the lives, in his case, millions of people.
Yeah.
And we're always having a struggle with, I don't know what to do. Well, I mean, sometimes we just have to make a decision. But but guys, tonight we're going to talk to Annette. She's got an amazing story. Actually, your site or is it your group? Is it called A Wild Ride Called Life?
Yes.
That's your. Okay.
Yes.
Well, why don't you take a couple minutes just to kind of get the flow going here, Annette, and tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself, and whatever you're comfortable with, and then what you're doing.
Sure. Yes. So like you said, I am Army retired veteran. I retired as a major. I spent 17 years, 4 months in this service. And I'm also a military spouse of over 22 years and a mother to a college junior and a high school senior. And so really where A Wild Ride Called Life came from was due to my own mental health that I never fully recognized until I retired. I had gone through a lot of things growing up as a kid, into adulthood, into teenage, adulthood, and then through the military. So a lot of things that I suppressed that didn't really rise until my last days in the military, where, you usually, sometimes you get a choice in the retirement, but this time I didn't make the promotion list, and I was very devastated. I thought I had a plan. I thought I had 3 years left and I was going to be good, but that wasn't the case. And so I left, ashamed, embarrassed, angry, all the things. And that's where my depression just really hit it hit me. Now, through the years, I did suffer from depression, anxiety attacks, stuff like that, but we didn't really talk about it. Growing up, I didn't talk about it. And even in the military, you just didn't bring it up because you didn't want to be seen as weak. So I started to write, and I wrote in secret. I didn't want anyone to know about it. And then I think the more I started to just talk a little bit about it and realize that I wasn't alone, I decided I needed to do something, and not just to save my own life, but to help other people, because I know I wasn't the only one anymore. And so that's where that came from. What was supposed to just be a blog turned into so much more than that. I have, openly spoke about all my struggles, even as a mom and a spouse, and just trying to live life with an identity again, with a purpose, because I didn't feel like I had that. And yeah, I just, I realized that I had to live with my mental illness and not suffer from it. And in order to do that, I had to speak up, because it consumed me, and I wasn't living the life that I was supposed to live.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Annette, because you and I met through another mutual friend at a mental health conference. And I think the interesting thing is here, it's one of those things that you're right, we don't talk about. It's kind of like addictions. Probably the most prevalent addiction there is food addiction. Yeah. And no one ever talks about it, Right. It's kind of like, because it's the only drug that you can die without.
Right.
You got to eat.
Right.
And so mental health is, especially someone like you, you're in the military, you're supposed to be strong. A lot of men, the same thing. You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to take care of yourself. And, that's why, being a person of faith, I had to come to a realization in my own life that, I can't do this. I mean, no matter what. And do you find that unconditional love, starting with Annette, plays a big part in what you either have found for yourself and have maybe tried to teach to others?
Yes, I wasn't happy with myself, and because I was living with all these struggles and was too ashamed to say anything, I didn't feel like I was worthy. And I did have to get back into my faith, because I lost that for many years, and I was always angry at God and all that. So once I started to realize that I was made for more, that I was worth something, that made a complete difference. I surrounded myself by positive people. I started shutting out the things that weren't good for me anymore. And it made a huge difference to finally believe in myself.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have found that, forgiveness, which most people, whenever I've coached anybody or talked to anybody or did a workshop and brought up the word forgiveness, everybody's thinking, oh, well, why should I forgive them? Or, they don't want it, or they don't like, it's not for the other person.
Right.
You ask somebody to forgive you for yourself.
Yes.
It's kind of like climbing a mountain. You pack all this stuff in your pack, you're climbing a mountain, you want to go camping or whatever. And the higher you get on the mountain, that pack gets really heavy. And unless we start to unload some of that stuff, we're going to get worn out before we ever get to the top. And I think, and maybe you can attest to that, being a lady, that I have found that a lot of ladies want to carry all those burdens and responsibilities for everybody else. And so you don't take that time you need to nurture yourself and forgive yourself, because, how about this one? And then I would like for you to elaborate on it. I'm not enough. Does that ever come across your head?
Oh, yes. For many years. And you're right. I I've learned to use the word grace lately, to give ourselves enough grace and to learn to set boundaries and to learn that we need to really practice what we preach. I'll make sure everybody else is taken care of, but I'll forget about myself because I don't need it. And so that's what I thought. And then once I started to carve out time for me, it was like, oh, I forgot what this felt like. And so, yes, we have to remember that we are enough. We are worth that time for self-care. We are worth that time where we need to say no instead of yes all the time, or say yes to ourselves and say no to, the negative things that aren't made to be a part of our life. So all of that.
Yeah, and I have found, obviously, men and women, that the fear of not being enough is probably the one or two in this. Either it's not being loved and not being enough as the two top fears on the planet, men or women. And I find myself all the time, if something crazy happens, if I can slow myself down, I try to do a quick self-assessment. Okay, what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling that this is something that's affecting your love, that this person doesn't love you, or that you're not good enough, you're a fraud, you're not man enough to deal with this, or whatever it might be. And all of it's nonsense. It's all nonsense. Because it really comes from our own insecurities, that we all have to deal with. But that fear, that insecurity of not being enough is gosh, it's everywhere. Especially with young people, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I just see it. I see it everywhere. And I think it does stem from forgiveness, and I do believe that being able to forgive ourselves is so powerful. And we just don't, we don't teach it, and we don't take the time to do it. When we do it, when we have that ability, we don't do it.
You're right. I think we need to forgive in order to have peace and to move on, because then you hold that inside for so long that it wears you down. It consumes you.
So on your blog, your show, what's a general theme that you're hearing, Annette, across the board? Is there a certain age that you're talking to? Is it men and women, or women mostly? And what are they telling you today, 2020? What are their biggest concerns? What are their biggest fears going forward?
So it is both men and women, and their fears and the topics of discussion are feeling that they are not enough, that they they're too hard on themselves. And I think it stems from either a relationship they were in, or a trauma that they had to learn to overcome, and addiction. It's everything, but how they chose to overcome it, and it takes years for some people. It takes months. It all depends, but they're just trying to figure out how to live without feeling ashamed or embarrassed, because they had no one else to talk to. And so now, I think the stigma is still there, but I think now there are more platforms to be able to voice that, to use their voice to share their story. And I think that's one of the most important things right now, is to find those people that are not going to judge you for you to share your story, because I think that's what people want, to be heard. and not be judged. They just want to be heard.
And I like to call that, and tell me how you feel about this. And I think we've discussed it. People want to be understood.
Yes.
Which is, to me, heard, right?
Yes.
And encouraged.
Yes.
And so I think what happens is that, we're so good at this, which is judgment.
Right.
I think our society, and I'm saddened in a way, because, millennials and Gen Z, and I look at millennials, I look at Gen Zs now, mainly under 26, under 27, and they were all born with a phone in their pocket. And the millennials range, obviously up to early 40s, but and they're somewhat getting a little bit back on track, but that's because they're having families, and that has a way of straightening you out a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes.
But I think what I've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is a very diverse population. I mean, they grew up with, let's be honest, they had all the things that you would have thought would create an environment of forgiveness and kindness and joy and all these things. And up until just a few months ago, they didn't even have anything that ever was really dramatic.
Right.
Most of them don't remember what happened in 2007 and 8. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, gosh, they're so judgmental. It's like, if I don't agree with them, and to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I've been talking to a lot of kids in school. They're unhappy. They're anxious as all hell. And I think this judgment of whether it's mom and dad or whoever is making them, is wrecking their, it's really creating this anxiety and depression, because I've had to learn in my 60 years, I can't change anybody,
right,
except me. And they're trying so hard to get us to think like them that I think that's one of the reasons the suicide rate is so as high as it is, and it's going up.
Yes. No, what you're saying is I see it, because I have a daughter who'll be 20 next week, and I have a 17-year-old son.
Wow. Okay.
And it's they don't want to be judged, and they want us to understand their way of thinking. And we're sitting here trying to make them understand that we understand, because we've been there, but it's just, and they're stressed out and they're anxious. And then, they get depressed because they're just not happy with what they have. And it's like, you try to make them understand that you don't even know, like, this is, and so this whole time, this whole pandemic as well has not made it any better.
No.
So it's very difficult. And, we do try to be open with our children, but they're stubborn. They're in that generation where they think they know it all.
No. But we all went through there. I mean,
yeah.
My number one answer to a lot of these, and being a former school teacher, I had an ability to speak with these young people in a way that we didn't have the word empathy back then. We didn't have the word, all these terms now. I just had a unique way of seeing the world from their point of view. And I was telling a story this morning to somebody, and as I was looking here in my office, I have a trophy back there that coaches gave me at a high school where I actually went to school and then went back and was finishing up my student teaching. And I had actually been coaching there already. And they gave me a trophy, and they carved it. They did it themselves. They carved on the thing with 2 little crosses, the Savior.
Oh.
Because I was the guy that was going around saving all these kids. I was going to save every kid on that campus. I was going to save them all. Now, honestly, some of those young men are some of my best friends today. I saw a lot of them last year, and it's like we never were separated. Now, but at the same time, that has a cost to it. Mm-hmm. It will wear you out. It will wear you out. Now, as a parent, one of the things that I again, empathy, to see the world from their point of view, meaning that you could tell your 17-year-old, look, I was 17 longer than you were. I was talking to a couple guys at the gym the other day, and we were talking about how when we were kids, we had so much stuff in it that we would have dirt clod fights because that's all we had to play with. Dirt clods. Right?
Right.
Dirt clods. And we were laughing at each other, like, well, what was wrong with us? And the guy goes, because that's all we had.
Yeah.
We couldn't go inside and play a video game.
Mm-mm.
They hadn't been invented yet. So in my world, so the point here is that because you and I were their age longer than they are, and it brings to mind my grandson, who I'm going to go see here in a couple days, who's driving everybody crazy, including my wife. But he never gives me any trouble. And one of the things is because I treat him like a guy, because I think he needs a man anyways, more so. And his dad's trying, but for whatever reason, he can't figure it out. And I treat him like a young man. I don't give into it. I don't listen to it, but I have a certain knack and empathy. I talk to him in a certain way that kind of makes his eyes go up. It's like, well, who is this guy? He's not supposed to talk to me that way. But I think he needs to hear that. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. It's like being at Floyd's barbershop. You know what I'm saying? Being around a bunch of guys, because young men need to learn how to be men. Mm-hmm. And it makes them feel like I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. And I also have to earn his trust, like as you do as a parent, even though you're at a tricky age, because I tell parents with kids your age, you're done. Hopefully they have some good connections on the outside that are going to help them. Because by 17, your influence is pretty much wound up, right? It really is. So you just got to do the best you can. Mm-hmm. But I think the best we can do is love them unconditionally, mm-hmm. within reason. I love telling stories. You know what? Let's hold off on that. We're going to take just a quick break, and I'll come back to my little story here because I'll keep running my mouth. All right. We're back with the Health, Love, and Life show, and I have Annette Wittenberger, and she has a wonderful blog, a wild ride called Life. She also has a show. What's the name of your show, Michelle? Annette.
The Truths We Hide podcast.
The Truth We Hide podcast. And that was a Freudian slip there because I met her through somebody named Michelle. So we need to look that up. We need to look up her podcast, and I'll let her share with that at the end here, and her blog as well, because she is, I think, addressing a real problem today with not only just mental health, but anxiety, depression, and all the things going on, especially right now through COVID, as hopefully we're winding down here a little bit. But we really need to address these problems and not just brush them away or bury them, because they're not going to go away. They're getting worse. Do your homework. They're getting worse. But we were talking about unconditional love and how when we, as parents and now as grandparents, it really is all about unconditional love. Because say what you want as a mom or a dad, you can't fire your kids. We talk tough. I actually know a guy that did that. He kind of kicked his daughter out of the house. And I was actually working with his daughter. I worked with both his daughters. I worked with him. And one day we had this big blow up, and he came to me and he goes, Coach, he goes, you think I was a little harsh? And I went, well, yeah. But, hey, I'm not there to tell him how to behave. I'm there to be the guardrail, and he's going to do what he's going to do. But say what he wants, because whenever I talk to him, I say, how's so-and-so doing? Well, I have, but you know what? I know, because no one's that cryptic, that they don't think about it because it's blood. And I was talking to you about unconditional love. And in my life, I've had one person that I could say without a doubt that loved me unconditionally, no matter what. I could have been a mass murderer. It didn't matter. And that was my grandma. total unconditional. And I knew it. I knew it until the day she died. I would have done anything for her. Anything.
That's amazing.
But that's what unconditional love will do for you. But
Yeah.
it takes time.
Uh-huh.
Now, with family, it works if you take time.
Right.
Because we have to show patience. They have no patience. We have to be patient to teach them patience. And just keep loving them and loving them and loving them within reason. You can't just, like I said, let them go crazy. But I think once we share that, but in relationships, and you know, our host here, Cece, probably knows this too, is with her groups. But in relationships, at some point, with unconditional love, if the other side's not sharing, we may have to walk away. We may have to walk away because that'll drive us crazy. But with kids, and I think that's what I try to bring to my grandson, because he knows all the people that are driving him crazy love him, but they're not willing to crawl inside of his body and see what he's seeing. See, one of the things I had to learn in neuro rehab, working with brain injuries, is I had to learn how to crawl inside their body and look out through their eyes and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And most people, when I tell them that, they look at me like, what are you talking about? But that's what you have to do. And these kids, if we're not doing that, they're click. They've already tuned you out. Because why do they hang around all the goofy people they hang around? And that, you know why? You know, what's the answer? You know why?
That's all they know.
Well, and those people all get it.
That's true. They understand them.
They all understand each other. They all understand each other. You know, mom's yelling at me, dad's yelling at me. They're cool. They're not cool. They don't like. They don't get it. They don't get it about school and how unimportant it is to them, and blah 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 blah. I acknowledge all that. I let them go. You know, one of the guys that I learned a lot from was a bandler, and he used to walk into a crazy like hostage situation and stuff, and he's one of the fathers of NLP, and within 15 minutes he would walk out with the guy arm in arm, because all they wanted was exactly what your show is doing, exactly what your blog is doing. All they wanted was someone to listen to them.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's all they want. That's all these kids want.
Right.
And so when my wife says, "You got to come over here and fix this," I'm not going to fix anything. How can I? I'm going to leave. Because when he stayed with me, he was great. 2 weeks, not a problem. Not a problem. How am I going to fix that?
Yeah.
I know. So that's why we're in such a dilemma. That's why we need people like you doing what you're doing, because these parents and these people need a place to come and, you know, pour out their heart, right? And I'm sure you're hearing it.
Right.
Yeah.
They do. They just need a safe space. It's hard to find those nowadays.
Do you guys on your show, do you guys discuss strategies at all?
Oh, yes. Each guest has their own way of how they've overcome it, how they've coped with it, and then how they are living a successful life now. So it's really empowering to hear how they have just gone through the most traumatic events in their life, but now they're helping other people. And it's like, wow, you know, we needed this years ago, decades ago, but we just didn't have a place to hear that, to find those people. So now they're here, and I think it's amazing.
So are they finding, go through some of the ways. Are they going through therapy? Is it drugs? Is it interruptive things? You know, give us some of the things that people are doing to have that breakthrough.
Some of them just, you know, they hit rock bottom and they realized they needed to get back up, or they weren't going to survive. Or yes, they've gone through therapy, or they just found that one person that believed in them and told them that they were worth more. Because sometimes if you're not, if if you're not surrounded by those type of people, then you don't know. So sometimes you just need that one football coach or that one teacher, or that one person to say, no, you are worth so much more. And that person, that's all they needed to hear to get up and continue life.
That is amazing. I've heard that story so many times, that one person, and that's why it's interesting. And I think about that, because when I'm around people that are sad, and I know I may never see them again, or maybe very infrequently, I always try to give them that one encouraging word and say, you look like you're gonna be this, or you could be this. I don't even know who they are.
Exactly.
I look at them in that moment. I say, you could be really good, and because they may go home and have parents, have a dad like I had, and God love him, but he didn't know how to encourage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
He didn't grow up that way, and so he thought that was, would be babying somebody. And so I try to do that with everybody I see and say, wow, you're going to be amazing. You're going to be a great, astronaut, whatever they want to be. But, so I love that. But at the same time, you've heard this, I'm sure you've heard this before. If you were a friend, somebody's, complaining about not wanting to live or not wanting to this, and you take a pillow and you put it over their face and you try to smother them. You ever seen that?
I haven't.
Oh yeah. And what do you think they do? They fight like hell.
Oh, yes. Okay.
They fight like hell. And I'll tell them, really, for someone who wants to die, you're sure fighting like your life depends on it.
That's interesting. Yes.
And there's a book. What is it? I just loaned. I'm gonna go pick it up. I loaned it to my daughter to give them, my granddaughter. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Phenomenal book, very short book. So I would recommend anybody get that book or have it on hand and hand it out. I was teasing one of my neighbors. I gave it to her a couple of years ago, and she finally handed it back to me a couple of weeks ago. And every time I saw her, I said, "Where's my book?" And I'll get it. But we have to, don't we?
Yes. Yes.
Because it's real. And again, I would love to know your comments on this for men and women. For women, do you feel that suicide, since we've gone here, is a big attention grab? And for men, not so much, because they have a higher rate of completion?
Oh gosh. I think with both, they just want the pain to go away.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily want to die. They just wanted that pain to end. And I've known men that have committed suicide, and they were they were too ashamed to admit what they were going through. And the women just felt like they weren't worth enough.
Yeah.
And so, both sides, it's just heartbreaking. It's devastating.
No, it is. And I've been around suicide quite a bit. My dad tried to commit suicide when I was a young man, coaching, very young. And I remember the day that he did that. Because back then, our town, Phoenix, was very small. So I literally was coaching right down the street. He was at the VA hospital, literally, not even a mile away. So at my break, I drove down there. I went into the room, and I was a pretty big guy at the time. And I started yelling at him, because it was more about me than him. It's like, what are you doing? And why are you embarrassing me? Get it?
Yeah.
What did I understand? I was 21 years old. I didn't understand anything.
Right.
It was about me, not him. I had no idea the pain that man was in. None. And I don't know if it's better today or worse, because we have all the social media, but I see these men groups exploding, people doing what you're doing right now with a wild ride called life. And I don't see it any better. Because we're still seeking safe places to go. And it's almost like there's not enough safe places to go. Even the schools, you and I talked about this the other day, where in my state, the governor has, last year, he doled out $41 million scholarships for schools to put in a safe place for kids just to go. And I think you and I had a little discussion on it. I'm not a super believer in that I want there to be some structure to it where we're going to learn how to interrupt that pattern. What caused it? What's going on? What is it? Something at home? Can you talk to somebody? Is there a friend there, or maybe a mentor that's another student? Versus just, I want, anytime I feel any discomfort, to go away from it, because I don't think that teaches us anything.
You're right.
When something big hits, what's going to happen?
Exactly. I mean, the concept, it sounds good, but you have to dig deeper. You definitely do. You have to there has to be structure. There needs to be people there. You can't just, because then you're just teaching them to go away from the problem. But how are you going to fix it if it gets worse or if it happens again? And it's so much more.
Yeah, fear is such a crazy one. I've talked about it so many times. It's like the tiger in the jungle, Mm-hmm. You can run from it, but he will always catch you and he'll always eat you.
Right.
Or you can stand your ground and lean into that tiger and stare him right in the eyes. Yes. Because now it's on the tiger.
Right.
If the tiger's hungry, he's going to eat you.
Right.
But most likely, if the tiger's not hungry, he's going to walk away because you've stared him in the eye. And I think fear, once I can get people to understand that, let's see what your fear is. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that your fear is not scary. Right. I mean, it's scary. That's why you're running. Mm-hmm. But if we can get you to start leaning into it and staring at it and breaking it down, we have a chance. Right. We have a chance because I don't know. I'm sure a lot of the people that you're interviewing and are talking to on your blog, they're running.
Right.
They're running.
Yeah. They don't know where else to go because they're not around the people that they feel comfortable enough because they don't want to be judged.
Ooh. There's that judgment thing again, huh?
Yes.
From all these wonderfully kind, considerate young people, right?
Right.
And it's poison, isn't it?
It is poison because that is what's holding so many people back from saying anything. They don't want to be judged.
The opinions of other people, right?
Yes.
I don't want to do this because my friend's going to think I'm a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a paralyzing thing to live in that fear because of the judgment, I think.
I had a very good coach 20 years ago. He taught me probably more than anybody ever. It cost enough too, but he had a book called Performance Junkies. And I think that's what we're in. If we're not performing for our friends, we're not living. And I think that's where most people live their lives.
That is so true.
Instead of saying, wait a minute, like you were saying, let's surround ourselves with better people.
Right. Less
judgmental, more kind.
Yes.
More loving, more accepting. Mm-hmm. And because when we're having to perform constantly for our friends, it's just going to wear us out, right?
Yes. You're going to be exhausted. It's going to drain you mentally, physically, all of it.
Boy, there's so much here, isn't there?
There isn't. It is, and it's I laugh about it now because it took me into my I just turned 45. It took me until now to finally say I don't need this. Like I need to be around people that are going to lift me up and not bring me down, because too often I was afraid of what they were going to think. And, so now we just need to keep having these conversations.
So you started to unload your backpack.
I did. I sure did, because it was big. It's like a duffel bag.
You were rucking.
I was rucking for many, many miles.
Well, I see it. I've done it in my own life. I've done it. And boy, it's so much easier. And sometimes I wonder how I can get to sleep at night. Sometimes I don't sleep very good, but I don't think I don't sleep very good sometimes because of I never wake up worried about things. Mm-hmm. Because I have a little thing that I do before I go to bed. Or while I'm laying in bed, it's like let God let go and relax.
That's great. Yes.
And I learned that through, I think, Norman Vincent Peale many years ago, because I just tried, or sometimes you can, what do they call it, mind dump before you go to bed. Because some people, we have all this stuff in there about the things that you said to somebody and you didn't say this and you didn't. That's why I love to apologize or ask for forgiveness really fast, because I don't like thinking about it.
No. It does. It keeps you up at night. I play specific sleeping music at night so I can just let it go and just, because it could keep you up at night, all those things.
Mm-hmm. And but I've had to learn that. I mean, I'm old and you have to learn. I mean, and when you're dealing with an 18 or 19-year-old and you're telling these things, I'm constantly telling them, journal.
Yeah.
Get it on paper.
Yes, I told my daughter that the other day.
It's so powerful. I mean, look, remind her about Anne Frank, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that little 12-year-old girl who lived a lifetime, and I think she died when she was 14. Yeah. But she lived a lifetime, and she was wise. Right. But her father taught her to journal, and she just wrote down her thoughts. If kids would just do that, if they would just write down their thoughts. People.
Right. Just
write down your thoughts, because it's between you and God, or whatever your spiritual belief is. That's the real gist of this. And if we're not getting there, then we can't go to whatever place that might be for you.
Right.
Well, Annette, listen, I've taken more than your time. I just love this topic, and that's why we're going to do some more stuff. We'll probably have you on again. We're going to do that summit. We're going to get Cece to help us because she's smart. But take the last minute or so here, a couple minutes, share with people how they can find you, your blog, anything, phone numbers, I don't care. Let her rip.
So you can find everything really on the website, awildridecalledlife.com. Even the podcast is on there, but you can also search the Truths We Hide podcast on any platform that streams podcasts. And you can always message me through any social media site, Instagram, Facebook, the website. I get them all, and I will respond as soon as I can.
That's awesome. And everybody, please look up what Annette's doing. It's really super valuable. I guarantee you, every one of you that's listening to this knows somebody that's struggling with some type of mental illness. I guarantee you. I mean, I mean, and any of us that have ever had to go through it personally know just how draining and how exhausting it is. And we need more people like Annette to help us to deal with this stuff. The way I dealt with it was jumping in there and learning about it, and then having to work with brain injuries. But thank you so much, Annette, for coming on. And you're so appreciated. And I will be in touch with you in the next couple of days, and we'll figure something out, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Appreciate everybody. This is the Health, Love, and Life Show. And WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, Radio TV, #1 podcast, Internet Talk. Thank you, CC, for all that you do. Appreciate you guys. Bye.